when the video that we shot on yarn worms corrupted itself and failed, and was removed from Facebook, it was probably for the best, because we covered only one kind of yarn worm, and in reality there are lots of kinds of yarn. So you may tie stuff out of almost any kind of material. It could be a natural yarn, it could be a synthetic yarn like this, and they need to be handled very differently. So, put all that stuff over there and start off with my favorite kind of yarn, which is a product of the Lion brand. It's a natural fiber yarn, and it's got many colors. And if I hold this forward here, you probably can see that there are greens and dark browns and blue blacks and all sorts of different colors in a single strand of yarn. So we can tie a fly, taking advantage of all these multiple colors. Now, when you make the end of the body, the tail end of a yarn worm, if it's synthetic, you can either melt the yarn and twist it together, or you can put a little adhesive there and twist it together, as long as the adhesive is quick drying, and then you can create a twisted body that gives you the shape of the worm's body. I think we'll probably stick with glue, because too many people using heat and melting this and grabbing it with their fingers forget that the fingers have to be moistened and they have to be moving, and they burn themselves. So we'll stick with the safer stuff. Yeah, I'm going to make a kind of brown colored worm. So we'll just hunt here, and we'll find initially a couple of bits of brown yarn and cut it free of all the other colors. You could make yarn worms out of this particular kind of yarn in a whole bunch of colors. They tend to be brownish or pinkish, or sometimes darker, and it's nice to have the advantage of adapting to whatever there is there. So we're going to take our tying thread, which is a fine monofilament, and we're going to wrap the hook shank with it. Fairly open wrap, it doesn't have to be too tight, down along the entire length of the flat of the shank, so that the thread is hanging just behind the point of the hook. Then we're going to take these two strands of brown yarn, and we're going to tie them in very securely right at the back end of the thread wraps, and wrap that stuff down so that it makes a very little bump. That gives us a couple of strands of brown material sticking back a lot further than we want the worm's body to be. So we're going to pick our length, let's say about there, and cut both of these. They're about the same length. To use an adhesive, if it's a really good adhesive and strong, you don't want to go grabbing the adhesive, because if it dries real fast, you and this worm may become a unitary piece for a long time. This is Loctite 60-second plus yarn, which I like for this kind of an application because it is very strong and it dries very fast. And I'm going to take some of this and I'm going to run it along in a fair amount. One of those two pieces of yarn, pretty well covered. And I'm going to put the two pieces together. Grab the end with a pair of hackle pliers. It would be nice if I had the end of both pieces. Whoops. And I'm going to twist it, preferably not losing it entirely. And I can sit for a while this glue sets up. It doesn't take all that long. It is really a very fast setting type of glue. And we have a twisted yarn body. Now, we'll go back to this length of yarn, wherever it went, and we still have some pieces of brown here. So I'll get another piece of this material. And tie it in right where I tied in the back segment, and bring my thread forward to within about 1/8 of an inch of the eye of the hook. And then wrap forward. And you'll find that this is not exceedingly long, but it works just about right. And wrap it forward. Catch it with your tying thread and make several turns. We'll tie that down. Now the head of these worms is more blackish, and as we noted earlier on, we have a black, greenish, gray kind of tone in one of the other pieces of this same bit of yarn. So we'll just take another piece and wrap this darker color, a couple turns in the front to form the darker head of this aquatic worm imitation. And there we have a very simple, very quick to tie worm. And it doesn't take very long at all to make a worm like this. Remember that using a flame here to twist these ends together doesn't work, because burnt natural fiber yarn does not stick together. So, if we want to tie with something else that we could conceivably burn, stick together, we would probably use a synthetic yarn, a plastic of some kind. Let me get rid of this, and we'll go over here and get some plastic yarn. This is a polypropylene product that you might buy in a white color to make wings on a dry fly or something of that nature. It's available in fly shops. It's available in yarn shops for other applications. They used to make swimsuits out of it because it doesn't hold any water. But if you're going to use a yarn like this to form some kind of shape, and it's in strands, and you can see that there are 3 strands of yarn here, you want those strands to blend together to make one piece. To do that, you take a pet grooming brush, and you can do exactly that. Blend all those strands into one piece. And it gives it a very uneven end. So to even it up, you just cut the end off. Yeah. Let's get another hook. Get that nice. Try to wrap down along the hook shank like we did before. Do about the same point. And we can again tie that yarn in place securely. And this is a slipperier product than the yarn we were using before. So we'll pay attention to that. Now if I heat this with a lighter here, you can twist it together and burn your fingers. Or you can cheat and take a little of the same glue, put it right on the end, moisten my fingers like I would with the glue so that the glue won't stick to my fingers, which will stick them together, honest. And I can twist the end like that. Trim the excess a bit. You give it a nice uniform shape. And I have a worm body, just that quick. And it's very flexible. Now I got all this other stuff hanging out here. And how am I going to make the front of the worm? Well, we'll just leave this stuff right on the sides of the hook shank and move the thread right over it to the front. Then I'll take the same yarn and pull it back from the front, where it needs to be a little more secure than I had it, and pull it back to the rear, building up some bulk, trying to get this yarn spread around the hook shank, and just sort of open spiral the thread back, not very tight, and rough it down again. Bring the thread forward, pull the yarn up along the sides of the hook shank, tie it in place yet again. And one more time we'll bring the thread back. Get this yarn spread around. And then remove the the excess. So all I did is just move the yarn back and forth along the hook shank. Now nothing's really holding it in place all that well. So what I'm going to do is spiral the thread forward, but this time I'm going to do it in closer spirals, and I'm going to make a couple of tight wraps at each spot and create a sort of little segmented body. Very simple. And then crush down a little bit of that stuff in the front. We'll take a little, this happens to be Angora yarn, we'll be real fancy. Black. And we'll take a few turns right in front. Tie it down. And we have yet another worm. Not the same color as the last one. Not particularly by design, but using yarns like this, you could make it any color you want. They make this same yarn in orange, or we maybe use a little more tightness in the tail. This is a lot more translucent than the more typical designs. I cut a little bit too much away when I was trimming the shape. And we fix that. Well, they have another worm. The kinds of yarns that you can use to work with this type of approach are virtually limitless. There are colors that are more like a natural worm in a conventional yarn. There are tweedy yarns that have all kinds of colors in them. This one happens to be flat. Well, the worm is sort of flat really too, so you could tie this on and you could create a worm made out of this flat yarn. And it will work very well. And in fact, I've been outfished by this one particular fly a couple times. So let your imagination run wild. Try and keep your colors sort of earthy, and into the reds and pinks as well as the browns. A little gray mixed in is not a bad thing. Just try everything you can, and you may find that you produce the absolute ultimate worm out of a piece of yarn, and one skein of yarn can make you 4 lifetimes supply.